I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet. I'm here with the dude. We have a very special guest, a good friend from America First Legal, the founder, along with Stephen Miller, the great Stephen Miller. And of course, he is the great Gene Hamilton. Welcome to the Daily Cheat Sheet, Gene Hamilton.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
And I mean, for people not familiar, I encourage everybody to look at America First Legal. I can't think of a better organization out there fighting for Americans on a daily basis. And I'm not just saying that because Gene's on the show. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. They don't take a cent. Everything is through donations. So when they fight back against the system, they're doing it for fun and for free. You are a rare breed, Gene Hamilton, and America First Legal.
Thank you very much for having me. And it's really a privilege to be with you guys. It's a privilege to be with America First Legal. And our team's ready to rock and roll and have a great time and fight for this country and all the things that made us great.
Well, talk about that a little bit, because one of the things I think we're sorely missing, and we're getting it back a little bit. Stephen Miller was on Fox News yesterday, and he called pretty much the Democrats an extremist movement, which I think we could all agree. There has been a real loss of moral clarity in our country and in the world. You, AFL, Stephen, obviously President Trump, a few people in the cabinet have that moral clarity. What exactly is the America First Legal?
Yeah, so America First Legal is, I think, what many people in this country think, or at least thought, that the ACLU was or could be. We are an organization that's actually committed to fighting for real people, fighting against real discrimination, fighting for people, as you say, against the system, right? Against kind of the man. It's really kind of funny because if you think about what the average person would have told you 40 years ago about the ACLU and what it was fighting for and all these other different things, as 40 years ago, I guess I'm dating myself. So maybe more like 50, 60 years ago. But we are here to stand up for the everyday average American who feels like they have no voice in the world. They have no power. They have no recourse, nowhere to turn. And yet this is kind of the most numerically common. There's more people like this in America who aren't elite. They're not privileged. They're not members of special clubs or anything. And yet they're the ones who time and again, the leaders and the actual elite and the political establishment in this country have forgotten about and left behind. And so whether that's in terms of fighting discrimination based on race, whether that's in terms of fighting censorship, fighting for secure borders, stopping radical ideology from spreading throughout our schools, K through 12, fighting for merit in actual university admissions or when in the employment context, all of those various issues are issues that we work on. We represent real people in real cases with real consequences. We're not afraid to sue anyone. We're not afraid to take on any case, whether it's a big one or a little one, or if it's going to sue a government, or whether that's federal government, state government, local government, whether it's conducting oversight and exposing bad conduct. There's a whole kind of spectrum of things that we're dedicated to. And look, every day we get to wake up and we get to say, okay, how are we going to move the ball forward today for this country and for our clients? And so what that looks like on a given day is going to shift from day to day, depending on bandwidth, depending on workload, depending on existing case obligations. Obviously, you can't skip court. If you got a client, you got to go to court. But there's a lot that we're dedicated to doing, all with this kind of advancing this mindset that I think that a lot of people used to have in this country, where it didn't really matter who you were, where you came from, who your parents were, that it was possible to have, to be somebody in America and to live your best life and to actually live out what was known as the American dream. But that all required a lot of baseline societal understandings and commitments, like understanding and appreciating the Constitution, of the United States as the supreme law of the land, and understanding that no matter who you are, that if you united around this idea, these common kind of values that we had as a country that have made us the greatest country in the world that the world has ever seen for hundreds of years, that we all appreciated those and we advanced those ideas. And we talked about things like assimilating into the culture, into, becoming an American and adopting the American identity. Those are the things that we want to restore and make great again in this country. Those are things that have been sadly lost. So it's going to be a long road to hoe.
Well, you say assimilating into the country, and it looks like we have a lot of immigrants that have come here both legally and illegally, and there are large groups of them. Let's talk about Minnesota and these other areas where they're not assimilating.
Right.
They're actually turning it into little chiefdoms and we see it in the UK. It's happened where there are these towns that are completely taken over. How do we combat that? How do we make sure that, because immigration without assimilation is an invasion. It's not becoming American. It's not pursuing the American dream. How do we combat that?
Yeah, it takes commitment from the highest levels of government all the way down to your state and local leaders and to everyone in between, including churches, other nonprofit support networks, everyone committed to this idea that actually we do have to assimilate. If you come to the United States, you are going to adopt the American identity. You are going to adopt the American culture. Of course, you're going to come to the United States legally. You're going to come the right way. But even if you do, it's not enough for you to come here and just view the United States as an economic zone. We're more than an economic zone. We are a nation, a group of people who have these ideas that we all have adopted, this adherence and appreciation for the Constitution. And so when you get into, kind of almost tribal enclaves, right, where people just kind of all move together and they decide we're just going to keep speaking our own language. We're going to have shops and stores the way that we had them back in our home country. We are not going to embrace our American identity. We're not going to learn the language. We're not going to do anything else. Look, what does that look like if not invasion? And it's kind of funny because it's even the smallest little things. So for a long time, DHS, which of course administers a big portion of our immigration system, adopted kind of a different paradigm, a different framework than assimilation. They really jumped on this whole bandwagon that the left and a lot of people were pushing for a long time of integration. We're going to integrate you into society, which has a completely different meaning. I mean, at the end of the day, it means that you are going to integrate amongst the population, but you're not going to have to change who you are. You're not going to have to change some of these beliefs that might be at odds with what the majority or what the American populace has. And over time, as you pointed out, there's entire communities in Minnesota. There's entire communities in different places all across the country where we know that this has caused major problems. And that's not to diminish anyone who comes from those countries. Of course, like anyone can come from those countries. Anyone who can come, they can assimilate, they can adopt these values, they can understand that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And they can understand and appreciate kind of the Judeo-Christian system that this country was founded upon. But if you don't, and if you don't push those things over time, there are just so many ripple effects that we could talk about, maybe today at some point. There's so many ripple effects that it's only when you wake up after decades and decades of failed immigration policies, and you look at the world around you, you look at your country, you look at different states, and you say, what happened? And it was the consequence of some big picture, big issues like Biden opening the border, basically. But there's also a series of very, very consequential, small scale actions that in the aggregate work together to make a situation where it's not optimal conditions for success. And we can talk about also why people might want to do that.
I wanted to ask you about that because you're raising a really interesting point. Take Biden aside, right? You could look at time. I know you brought up the ACLU, so we don't really want to date ourselves. I was 3 when the Shah was taken down. So we could literally attribute 46 years of carnage to a horrific mistake by Jimmy Carter. we could attribute it today as the memorial of Abbey Gate. And we could look at all the wars around the world, and we could directly almost say Biden. And what you're talking about, when did this stop? When did this people coming to this country, did we become okay? As you look on the campuses, right? You look all over. When did this become okay to not assimilate, to not want to, not just want the American dream, but to speak the American dream?
It's a good question. I mean, I think this is one of those answers that'll depend upon the person. But based on my experiences working in the government, working at DHS and the Senate, working in the administration, in the White House, everywhere else, and just personal observations, I would think that it's really been kind of a 21st century where things have really been exacerbated over the last several decades post 9/11. To degrees that you never would have imagined on September 12th of 2001, when everyone in the country had kind of unified and everyone was embracing, oh, we love this country, we love this flag. But it was kind of in the aftermath of that that a lot of these issues started becoming more pronounced. Some of the stuff started in the 80s under the Reagan amnesty. Some of the stuff continued in the 90s. Some of the immigration policies that were pursued by the Clinton administration and the George W. Bush administration really kind of contributed to this. And some of it had relations to our defense policy, our foreign policy, the way that we conducted wars, the way that we had kind of failed policies across the board on a number of fronts. And all of these smaller decisions, again, in different contexts, with no one kind of sitting there at the end of the day, from a policy perspective, this is what people in the White House should be doing. This is what people at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, state, elsewhere should be doing, is taking a look at everything and saying, all right, how can we make sure that our immigration policy is actually serving the interests of the American people? Right? That's ultimately your responsibility. Your responsibility is not to the rest of the world. Your responsibility is, hey, we have this program. How's it working? Is it actually helping the American people, or is it harming them? If we take this action in this context, is it going to actually help the American people, or is it going to harm them? And until this administration, and I'd like to say the last Trump administration also, I don't think that was ever actually something that people deliberately sat down and thought about the consequences and kind of, hey, if we do invade this country, and we fail, what does it look like on the flip side? Does that mean that we're going to have to airlift tens of thousands of people into our country who probably don't share our values, who have grown up with different customs and ideas? And it's going to be okay if we just bring them to the United States because what reason? We feel bad. There is no one in the last administration, especially, who I think gave any iota of concern for what the average American was going through when they opened the borders and let in millions and millions and millions of illegal aliens, and what that did for competition for jobs and housing and government services and all of these other issues. To answer your question, Jude, at the end of the day, it's a combination of factors, but I think it's really something that sadly post 9/11, a lot of folks exploited different things that came about after 9/11 for their own purposes, and now we're dealing with the ripple effects now.
In the early 1900s, and a lot of people actually don't know this, is that we can't absorb all of the refugees of the world. I mean, it's only a tiny fraction that can come here. It's almost like a token. It's for us to feel good about ourselves that we could say that we took in some refugees. But really, if you want to help all the refugees of the world, you have to help them in their home countries. So, in the early 1900s, we were bringing in stonemasons and people that wanted a better life, but they were coming into work. And now we have a lot of people that are coming in for benefits. They're coming in for social services. It's a burden on the country. And in the state that I'm in California, their Medi-Cal is going bankrupt because they gave it out to all the illegal aliens that came here that don't belong here. And now they're taking away actual resources from citizens. So, and the previous administration, the Biden administration, allowed in something to the tune of 20 million refugees. And the current administration is deporting several 100,000. I mean, they're doing their best. They're doing an excellent job at it, but I don't think they're going to be able to get to the 20 million mark. And it's safe to say that if there is another Democrat administration in place, and let's look at who the stars of the Democratic Party are now, it's AOC and Bernie and Domney and all these lunatics, they're going to let in 40 or 60 million illegal aliens. We're never going to catch up, is my point. And I know that AFL filed a rulemaking petition to require ID to vote. How is that going? Because that seems like one of the safest ways for us to protect. I mean, what they're doing is obviously they're trying to import voters. And we know this because they were flying them to swing states. So it wasn't just that they were opening the borders and letting these people in. They were deliberately taking them to places where they would have a better chance if they voted for the party that allowed them in. So the Democrat Party allowed them in. They were counting on these people to vote for them. So this requiring ID to vote, how is that going? Where are we at?
Yeah, well, it's a great point. Several points you raised, and so let's just start with the last, which is
he does that every once in a while. By the way.
Well, look, this petition for rulemaking that we filed, I think a lot of folks will remember last year in the 2024 presidential election, a lot of attention was placed upon this issue, which is that if you go to vote using the federal voter registration form from the Federal Election Assistance Commission, you go and you look at it. In the top part, you fill out your biographic information, your name, date of birth, all this other little details. There, and then there's a place for your signature, and you've got to, swear that you're a voter, you are who you say you are, all these other things. Okay, fine. There is a checkbox where you check whether you're a citizen or not. So you check that box, and then you send your thing in to your local, in most places, it's the county registrar, maybe it's the Secretary of State in some other states, but you mail your form in. No proof required. No proof required. You don't have to show your birth certificate, your driver's license, any other kind of your passport, anything else. They just take your word for it based on your signature. And I think a lot of people say, oh, well, Gene, is that really, such a big deal? It is a big deal because on the back end, it's really hard to unpeel these things once they're actually on the voter rolls. Is it possible? Yes. But at what level? I mean, at some point, you have to be able to audit these rolls. And unpacking and unwinding these problems takes time. It's something that takes a lot of resources, a lot of commitment, a lot of interaction between different government databases to be able to do. And so what we did is we filed this petition with the Election Assistance Commission, and we said, hey, we need you to think about adding some kind of documented proof of citizenship to the federal voter registration form that you administer. So they've accepted that, and they've actually posted it for public comment. So right now, today, you can find it on our website, and we'll have a link for it later. You can find it also just by Google searching it. There's an opportunity. Yeah, there's an opportunity for people to post a comment about what they think about that requirement. And then the Election Assistance Commission has to consider that comment. And then once they weigh those comments, then they can make a decision about whether or not they're going to add it to the federal voter registration form. But, to your bigger point, Mint, is, what is the end goal of all of these things? Why would you ever have a situation where you don't require someone to prove they're a citizen? Well, I mean, you would think that, especially with the way that the left talks about, our democracy and protecting our democracy,
in danger, yeah.
You would want to actually, if you want to protect our democratic republic, not our democracy, our democratic republic, that you would actually want to ensure that only citizens go on the voter rolls, and that there's no room for error. There's no room for mistakes. Every single vote counts. We all know that. We've all seen the very, very tight elections. And if the presence of 1, 10, 100, 1,000 illegal aliens, whatever the case may be, it's completely unacceptable across the board, because any single one of them has the potential to swing a potential election.
So we're going to hopefully this goes through, and they will require proof of citizenship. But you have states like California that are giving out government ID. They're giving out social security numbers or EIN numbers. So again, like, do we need people to show up with their birth certificates? Like, how far does it go? It seems like it's almost that they've set up the local systems, the state systems, to circumvent anything that we could possibly put in place to, secure election integrity. So where do we go with it? I'm concerned about this, for my kids, like our country. This is our democracy. This is our future. So how do we protect it?
Well, those are really good questions, also. And look, I think every state election official has certain obligations under federal law with respect to what they have to do to maintain and protect the integrity of their voter rolls. And so there's a number of things that are there. They have obligations, for example, to purge inactive voters, folks who have died, all these other kinds of things. And in a lot of places, especially like in California, the government hasn't been too excited to want to do those maintenance activities, that, good government maintenance activities. So there's some tools there. I think the federal government has some tools in that space also, that they can use if state officials fail to act, local officials fail to act, to ensure that it is at bottom, at the end of the day, what we're talking about when we have ineligible voters, whether they're illegal aliens, dead people, folks who've moved out of state, anything in between on the voter rolls, is it's the potential for disenfranchisement, right, of every American citizen's vote. And it's disenfranchisement not because necessarily they're going to have a bunch of people show up in person at a election location and cast a ballot under a name, even though they're an ineligible voter. Yeah, sure. Does that happen? Of course it happens. But what the whole point of their game and the whole point of their scheme that we all saw as a country play out, especially during COVID, was enhancing the acceptance of mail-in ballots. And so the more names that you have on the list, the more absentee and also just mail-in ballots that you can submit. And there's really, with a lot of states, because of their failures to impose certain safeguards, it's hard. It's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube after a ballot has been cast by somebody who wasn't actually supposed to be on the voter rolls at all, or who votes in somebody else's name. There's a whole bunch of things there. So you both are 100% right to point to this as one of the most consequential and important issues facing our country today. And the American people at home, regardless of which state they live in, if it's a blue state or red state or blue county, red county, it doesn't matter. This should be something that should unify everybody. It should be something that everybody cares about, because it very much does control the future of this democratic republic that we live in, and will set the tone for our kids and our kids' kids and their kids, and every generation thereafter.
So we're here with Gene Hamilton. You've served from president of the AFL, but you've served in 2 White Houses. You've served this country as very well, and we are greatly appreciative of that. It is not easy work what you're doing. The blowback you must get, we could witness it on TV sometimes. And you get to be on Mark Levin, and you get great interview Sunday night with Levin. I think it was Sunday night that you were on Levin, or Saturday night. But you get to see you in front of Mazie Hirono, however you pronounce her name, and you might have had one of the best answers to any question I've ever heard in my life, when she said to you, "What court was that, Gene?" And or however she said, and you said, "The Supreme Court." And her response was, and I don't want to get, because you're probably going to have to be in front of her again, so I don't want to take any shots, but I want to ask you a question. How do you prepare for going in front of the House and testifying? I mean, that must be like, you must have to do some shift in your head of disassociation, of, I'm trying to be nice with the words I'm looking for.
Well, look, I appreciate that in all of those kind words. I mean, look, uh, much like in any context in which you're preparing, whether it's giving a speech, whether it's memorizing a script, whether it's anything where you're going to have to, your words matter. You're the leader of a synagogue, or you're pastor of a church, or you're anything in between. You have to really focus on, okay, what are my key points? And I'm under, when you're before the Senate, before the House, or anyone else in Congress, you're under oath. Your testimony's under oath. Can't lie. You have to be factual and truthful in your responses. And so it's just, I don't know. I mean, for me personally, I think it's just a matter of going through thinking, what are the main points that I need to get across in response to questioning from any senator on any, from either side, from either party, and what's the best way to understand where each of them are going to be coming from. And look, to be honest, I mean, I hope that Mazie Hirono is at a future hearing with me. I enjoyed my questioning
For those not
Mazie.
familiar, she's the senator from one of the senators from the great state of Hawaii, where I've always been curious if they ever actually had a televised debate before they had elections over there. That's the only question I will ask about that. But before Men goes, I want to really get to something important, because we're sort of skirting around two different subjects, right? We're talking about illegal immigration on one hand, which obviously I don't believe it was just for votes. I think there's something way more nefarious that Democrats and the left have in mind other than just votes. They want the chaos, right? It's the Soros approach to many things. So we're talking about, let's take the illegal immigration and let's talk about a group that we're not willing to, many of us, talk about out loud, which is the major issue with Islamic extremism in our country.
Right.
And you brought up Bush, and I often say the 6 stupidest words out of his mouth were, Islam is a religion of peace. These are my words, not yours. These are George Bush's words.
Right.
And I think it put us in a huge quagmire, because it made them a group you can't touch. And I'm blanking on that word right now. But it made them one of those groups. And when you look at Austria this past weekend, I'm sure you saw the news, where Austria is now allowing Sharia law in civil cases. And I really believe, as President Trump yesterday passed did the executive order with no flag burning, it's very interesting. You guys, the president, you, Stephen, and a few others are the only people that seem to have this moral clarity, where you're looking at the rest of the world burning flags and raising flags of Islamic nations, and you're here to say, we don't want that here. We want the American flag raised, not burned. And when you look at all these protests, you never see American flags. And I know there's a lot that I might have just said there. I don't want to get you in any trouble, so the thoughts are just mine. But I think it's something we're not talking about enough.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it touches on some of the stuff that we were just discussing a minute ago, which is, how do you preserve a society? How do you ensure maximum human freedom and success and thriving in liberty, which are all things that most Americans, especially liberals, used to claim to care about? Look, at the end of the day, importing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who objectively do not support those same concepts into the United States without any kind of vetting on the front end, without any kind of emphasis on assimilation upon their admission, kind of on the back end, and just actually no attention paid to anything in between, and then just telling the existing pool of American citizens, hey, you're a bigot if you don't like this, is really a recipe for for disaster. I mean, it's one of these things that it's really hard to imagine this happening in the United States in the year 2025, especially considering if you'd gone back at any point in history, in our country's history, decades and decades prior, it would have been kind of unfathomable that this could ever happen in the United States. Now, look, let's just be clear. There are some people from those countries who can embrace the Constitution, and they can embrace individual liberty and understand and appreciate and value their fellow Americans, and respect freedom of religion, and respect the differences that we have in this country. But what is a good way to ensure that does not happen? Put them all on a bunch of airplanes by the tens of the thousands, evacuate them from a war zone, and dump them into the United States with no vetting. Yeah. Right? I mean, what are you doing then? I mean, you are actually acting callously and maliciously towards Americans of all walks of life who are already here. And a lot of the people on the left like to say, "Oh, that's a white supremacist bigot talking. It's ridiculous. It's unfair to every single person who is here. I don't care what their background was, whether they're already a Muslim themselves, whether they're Japanese, Chinese, whether they're Mexican, whether they're from the United Kingdom originally, wherever their family lineage traced them to." And they are now part of the community. They are American citizens who make up this country and the populace that we have today. Dumping in a bunch of people who actually just don't even understand how to function in a society where we have these values and these freedoms, and where it's not okay to, for example, rape and molest young women just because they're there. Like, that's actually something that is not okay in this country. But do you think that any one of these that tens of thousands of people that got dumped off in 2001 into the United States, that they got any kind of a really meaningful talk before they came in, that they did an actual security screening and background check on them? And yet here we are today. And if you try to fix things, and Men was getting at this earlier, is that, when you're invaded, more or less, by a bunch of people who are hostile.
It's an invasion. Let's be honest.
Hostile to your way of life, and don't care about your Constitution. And all they care about is the ability to live here, work, and earn money and advance their own ideology. That's not becoming part of the nation, of our nation. That's not this, melting pot thing that people used to always talk about and appreciate. It's none of that. That's a recipe for national suicide. And so, look, Donald Trump, President Trump, is one, and Stephen, and JD Vance, and so many of the cabinet are folks who understand this really, truly to their core. They understand that their obligation is to the American citizens, all of the American citizens, and not just those who are in power, and not just those who want to make money by importing a bunch of cheap labor, or who are going to score political points. But who understand the stakes and what has made this country great, and understand that there is actually not another place in this world that is like the United States. There are some that are nice countries, nice places, but there is no United States. There is no alternative. And so when it comes down to it, this is all we have. And this is what we have to protect. And this is what we have to preserve. And so you design your policies and your ideas around that. And then, of course, me personally, I think that you have to be prepared for whatever comes your way from the latest dark forces at work, who are advancing different tactics and strategies and techniques to advance Marxist ideology and achieve their Marxist goals at the end of the day. And immigration is one of their greatest tools that they've been able to use to advance their Marxist goals. Racial discrimination is another one. And equity and DEI and all of these concepts, some of the environmentalism, some of these other things that they've used very successfully against Western societies. Less so against the United States, although they have been successful here. But if you look across the West universally, the Marxists have been on a campaign for 200 odd years. Yeah. And they come in waves, right? And they have varying degrees of success. Sometimes it's great, and they make a lot of gains, and sometimes they don't. But what you have to always remember is every time you see something new from the left, every time you see something like, now you're a bigot if you don't accept the genital mutilation of children in a school. You think, well, my God, where did that come from? Like who poll tested that? It's not a result of poll testing, right? This is not as though that they think that this is going to be popular stuff. These are subtle ways that they have influenced society, and that these Marxists have injected fissures into our country to advance this kind of theory, to prop up this false theory that there's really just ultimately two classes forever at conflict. And ultimately, we're going to have this uprising, and we're going to lead to someday to this communist society where we have all these elite bureaucrats who control who gets what based on, more or less how loyal you are to the state at any point in time. And so I think that if we look back at the last several decades, especially, but throughout, especially the last 200 years, and you see the rise and fall of nations, you see various policy decisions, you see a lot of things. A lot of these struggles really come down to a group of human beings across the world, whether American citizens or otherwise, who are committed to concepts of individual liberty and freedom and human flourishing and advancement, versus the committed Marxists. And a lot of the stuff at the end of the day just comes back to some of these things. It's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. There might be new techniques. They might show the ugly Marxist ideology in new ways.
It's the same playbook,
fronts, but it's the same playbook. Yeah.
Sebastian Gorka brought this up the other day. I love Sebastian Gorka, and I don't know if I hope you're a fan of his, but he's
great. He's a good friend.
He was talking about somebody in the podcast universe now, and he was essentially saying what he was bringing up was 100-year-old stuff, nothing new, and he was comparing it to Pat Buchanan. It was, I don't know if you saw what I'm referring to, but where he said he's not as smart as Pat Buchanan. This certain person, I don't want to say he might be. It just doesn't matter. But you brought up such a great point, because Elon Musk posted this yesterday, and I still love Elon Musk. I believe he's the savior, one of the saviors of the First Amendment and the Constitution. And I love that President Trump didn't treated him as well as I've ever seen anybody treat somebody that he's had an issue with. And he brought up the rape rate.
Yes.
In the UK, in France, and it was and Germany, and from the year 2020 to 2023, you're talking about multiples of over 10. So let's say in the UK and Wales, it was 6,000. In 2023, it was about 65,000. You're talking about France, 40,000 from 4,000. You're talking about, just massive numbers, Gene. And this is something we have to worry about here. We cannot allow that here. And when you look at what they've done to the policing, to what the regimes have done to emasculating our military, emasculating men, emasculating our police forces, that's the path they want to have set in our country. Maybe I sound crazy. I don't know, but I see that as being, we do not want that here. We want our women safe, our daughters safe.
What a concept, right? As I was saying, it's the failure to grasp that there are just fundamental differences in cultural values in what different societies permit and tolerate. And so if you're talking about Pakistan or Afghanistan or any of these other places that have really abhorrent cultural practices, whether we're talking about young girls, young boys, teenagers, there's abhorrent stuff. There's real evil that comes about in the world. And the notion that you can just pick anybody up from any part of the world and drop them into any other part of the world without any kind of consequences is lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. People can succeed and thrive, just like Americans or citizens of any other country can go to different countries and they can succeed and thrive if they embrace the values of that country, if they understand that they have to align their behavior in accordance with the customs and the laws and the rules of that country. But the whole notion that, well, we're just going to bring people in and there will be no societal consequences. We're not going to have to teach them anything on the front end. When it comes to enforcement, we're not going to enforce laws, if you look at the UK as an example, against entire segments, and we're going to sweep things under the rug like these rape gangs. And then on the very end of the spectrum, let's just say you failure on the front end in terms of your vetting and screening, bringing people in. Failure at the midpoint, and when it comes to criminal enforcement. There's the criminal consequences aren't exacted. Maybe they're not getting prosecuted at all. Maybe they're not getting sentenced the way that a domestic citizen would be. But then when it comes to the back end, the actual immigration consequence in a lot of these places across the world, the back end consequence of, hey, it's time to go because you violated our immigration laws by engaging in this activity. Well, no, then it's really cruel. It's really cool. Oh, you couldn't send that person back to there. They would face persecution. And it's just this entire warped mindset that, again, when you just sit there and you collect your thoughts and you think about it and you say, what is the obligation and what is the role of government in a society, in any society? In its fundamental obligation at its core is to protect the citizens of that society. Yeah. It is to prioritize the citizens of that society. It is to enact policies that benefit the citizens of that society. It is not to worry about anybody else. There's hundreds of other countries across the world. And so if you have leaders, if you're electing leaders at the county, at the state, at the city, or at the national level who have any other approach other than caring about the well-being of their citizens as their number one priority, then I guess, sure, you could support someone like that if that was your decision, but you have to realize that you are actively undermining the future of the country when you support folks who actually have that mindset, have that worldview. And you can see this play out in so many different contexts, even, outside of, kind of the cultural context with relation to Islamism, as we were just referring to. You could look at situations like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the so-called Maryland man, right? And you have sitting senators and elected representatives who are acting like it's their highest and best use of their time to stick up and voice support for somebody who is an illegal alien in this United States. The same people who don't speak up for anyone, any citizen in their community who's been harmed or raped or murdered by an illegal alien. And you just look at that, the contrast between the two, and you say, okay, well, why do we keep reelecting this person? We can have substantive policy disagreements on this issue, that issue, or the other issue. But when it comes to tax policy, right? Well, whatever. I'm generally opposed to taxes, but of all kinds. But I know some people have different opinions.
You're on the right podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but when it comes to something that is so core to the future of your country and is so core to the survival of your country and to who you are as a country, as like immigration policy, there's really no room for error there. There's really no room for anything other than people, regardless of their beliefs on other issues, who understand that their role, their duty, their obligation flowing back through thousands of years of human existence.
So we know that, for 1,400 years, the Muslims tried to invade Europe and didn't work, but now through immigration, they've got it. And it's not the best and it's not the brightest. There are plenty of really fine, beautiful, amazing, well-intentioned Muslims out there in the world. The ones that we're talking about are the ones sowing chaos throughout Europe.
Yes.
The same thing here in America. Now, all of these things that we're talking about. So the way I see it, and I might be wrong, but the way I see it, it's a waterfall effect. And what we're talking about, from voter registration to campus protests to rape gangs in Europe. Like all of these things have a common denominator, and it's Soros backed and Neville Roy Singham, I think that's his name. He's an American born who lives in China. He's a billionaire and he's funding all this stuff. So, I mean, arresting protesters that are, as they're doing it really doesn't do anything. These guys are paid protesters. There's a guy on Instagram or Twitter that's just exposing them all the time. But is anything being done about going to the top, going to these actual Soros guys and to this Singham guy and figuring out what they're doing and how it violates any of our laws or anything like that?
It's a great question, by the way. Can I just say that's a great question? Because Soros, for some that don't know, Gene, is banned in certain countries. He's actually banned in his home country of Hungary.
Yeah.
And they banned him in France for insider trading. They tried to ban him in England for trying to break the pound. They tried to ban him in Israel. So you're talking about people that are in our country, as Mendes actually that are actually threats to our society. Has there been anything to push back against, I don't mind saying it, kicking him out of our country?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that without getting into too many things, there are people, very serious, very deliberative people who are looking at these networks and who are thinking about these things. And again, if you come back to the premise of what is the obligation of the government, and it's to look out for the best interest of their citizens. So that takes you down a lot of different paths when it comes to solutions. And one of the craziest things that I think that a lot of us have seen over the last 8 months or so is the way in which cutting off government cash to a lot of NGOs has had massive ripple effects on the ability of kind of the global left to organize and to do a lot of the things that they used to do. I mean, is really, quite frankly, sick. What was happening in the past, whether we're talking about USAID, whether we're talking about any other programs or departments or agencies that are out there and the things that they were funding, we all know money's fungible. Yeah. Money's fungible. And so some grant that was going to go to some nonprofit to support X, Y, or Z reasons, X, Y, or Z programs can just as easily be used to fund all kinds of other things. And so the underlying network of NGOs and money that has been moving to advance these causes is very much a serious concern. And it's something that I know a lot of people are thinking very seriously about. And I guess we'll kind of see what plays out here. But really, I think it's just alarming when you sit back and you reflect on the fact that there are people like that out there who are so committed to kind of a hatred of our way of life, a hatred of kind of, again, not only our country, but the entire idea of Western civilization, where at the center of it, of course, is this individual freedom and the empowerment of the individual to make better lives for themselves, an appreciation for differences, an appreciation for individual uniqueness, and religious freedom, and all kinds of other issues, that there are people who are so committed to the destruction of the United States that they would fund these agitators to go out there and do things. None of that stuff is organic. I mean, I would say not none of it. There are some organic protests that occur in the United States. And we all know basically kind of what they look like. They typically tend to involve some really sad looking liberals standing up holding some kind of, really foolish signs that are poorly constructed. But most of these other ones, everyone has matching signs and they're all printed, and you've got the same kinds of people agitating and using, bullhorns and all kinds of other stuff. This is not organic. This is not real. This is not what real people do on a Tuesday morning. Most people are at work, or they're taking their kids to school, or they're, doing other things. And so, it's just one of those things that I think over time, and Judah, you made a really good point. A lot
Every
of
once in
this,
a while.
every once in a while, a lot of this, I think, so many Americans who have woken up to this, this kind of phenomenon over the last several years, the last 3 years in particular, owe a lot to Elon Musk for the freedom that we have to communicate on a platform like X that has allowed us to see things and talk about things and to call out things in ways that no one else ever was able to do previously. Things that would have got you censored, would have got you banned from using the Twitter platform. Now we're free to talk about and we're free to engage on. And there's really committed patriots out there like Mike Benz, who's really exposed a lot of this kind of dark underworld of USAID funding in the way in which resources have been used to undermine this country. And we could get into a lot of other fronts, but it's really, quite frankly, scary that nobody in the last administration or for several decades prior really shared the same kind of outlook as this president and his team, which is, what is our number one obligation? Our number one obligation is to make life better for the American people. It's to serve no other purpose. There's no fourth branch of government. There's no kind of bureaucracy or high-minded ideals that have no attachment to the Constitution or anything that's lasting and enduring. That's kind of the way that they all used to. I won't get into it right now. There's a lot of talking points we all heard for decades that are just complete fallacies and really, kind of the foundations built on sand that have really been exposed in the last 8 months. And I think we're going to see a lot more good things to come.
Well, I think it's exceptional what you're talking about, because I brought this up before. It's like President Trump this time put together, and I'm very grateful that he quote unquote lost in 2020. I think it was, it saved our country, him losing in 2020, because it allowed the Democrats to show who they are, the left to show who they are. So we had to suffer through everything. We had to suffer to hell before we got to heaven, which was 2024. And I say that because they were able to hide some of their stuff very well, but they couldn't control themselves. And we witnessed 4 years of anarchy and total chaos by the government. And the American people did too, to the point where I often think that J.D. Vance really did when he was debating, and he used the words common sense. And it really sort of summed up Trump's policy. But you brought up, he sort of, I don't know your musical taste, but I refer to his cabinet like the Traveling Wilburys, right? It was just the greatest supergroup ever put together. Are you familiar with them, Gene?
Yeah, vaguely, yes.
It was Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Tom Petty,
yes,
Jeff Lynne from ELO, and Roy Orbison. And I look at this cabinet that he's put together, all merit-based, yet they're the most diverse cabinet I think we've witnessed in a lifetime. Do you think it's a mistake not to highlight that sometimes?
I think that the cabinet that the president put together is just really exceptional. It's the best one that we've ever seen. And, I think highlighting some of the, I know that the White House has pointed out, who these individual human beings are, and some media outlets have picked up on it. But when you're committed to merit, everything else works itself out. You hire the best people for the job based on merit. And you see the results play out. And Donald Trump has a very diverse cabinet. It's always funny to listen in 2024 to all these just really enraged women, liberal women, who said Donald Trump was anti-woman, and it's going to be, it's going to be horrible for women, and he's going to erode women's rights, and he's going to do all these other things. And the first key staff member that he hired as his chief of staff was a woman. I mean, it's just one of these things. It's just wild. But Donald Trump hires people.
Her name, oddly enough.
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump president of the United States, based on my own experience and observations, has hired incredibly talented people based on their merits, as opposed to Joe Biden, who picked, oh, I'm going to have the first this and I'm going to have the first that. And so depending on if your skin color was the right color or your religion was the right religion or something else, and then he would filter and decide who he wanted to pick based on some arbitrary quotas in his mind, that it's just so fundamentally wrong. Not only is that illegal in most contexts, sadly not for picking cabinet members, but not only is that just bad policy and bad practice, but when you actually are committed to merit and hiring the best person for the job, regardless of who they are, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their background, and you say, you know what, gosh darn it, you're the person who's going to deliver results on this particular policy item for us. And so you are going to be the person that I'm going to trust, that I'm going to empower to do this. And I don't care what anyone says. And that is so refreshing. It is so refreshing. It is what we all want as Americans, I think.
Yeah. I think it's smart that they're not highlighting the fact that it's so diverse, because it's not about diversity. Diversity happened naturally. He went for merit, and through merit, he got the best of the best. So there is no DEI hires there. And if there's someone there that's a minority or gay or whatever, and he has all of those people in his cabinet, they are there because of merit and not because of the DEI.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you a little bit, though, if we could steal you for another 15 minutes, if that's okay. I know your time is very pressing, but the reason I bring that up, why I think it's important sometimes, is you have a lot of, let's say you could have a gay person that's saying, oh, this is one of the most discriminatory White Houses against.
We should be out there touting that. It's not for the administration. It's deliberately not for the administration to do it. The administration is solely focused on merit.
That's a good point.
And it's guys like us that could go out there and debunk all those other people. Yeah. So I think that's right. I did want to ask about something else that ties into the Soros and all the other things that we're talking about. We're talking about gerrymandering. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think New Hampshire has 0 Republican representatives in Congress. And the same thing goes for Maine and Connecticut and Rhode Island, Delaware, Massachusetts, and Vermont. And they have, between 47 and 32% of the public has voted for Trump. So 42 to 47% is Republican, yet they are so gerrymandered that they get 0 representation. And it looks like the Republicans are finally taking a page out of the Democratic playbook, and they're going to do a bit of gerrymandering too. Where does this lead to? And how do we not get into gerrymandering proliferation where everybody's just doing it up the wazoo and it just goes off the rails? It's just unhealthy for the country.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because there's a lot of people that I respect who have different, schools of thought on this. And one of those is kind of this concept of mutually assured destruction, right? Which, of course, I'm very kind of inclined towards based on everything that I've had to live through over my professional career, which is this concept of, look, 2 can play at that game. Fine, we're going to do it. And then once you have the credible threat of enforcement on both sides, then there is some modicum of moderation in policy making.
Doing it. But
they have been doing it.
Yeah,
exactly. And so the whole thing, that's the whole farce of this entire issue, is the notion that, Texas is the impetus for all of this, right? Yeah. Texas is gerrymandering. So now I'm Gavin Newsom and I'm Mr. Tough Guy and I've got to run in and I've got to gerrymander my state. And we're going to, do this, that, and the other. And all the other left leaning states like Massachusetts are going to, complain and gripe about Greg Abbott. Oh, and of course, they have so many Republican districts in Massachusetts that the hypocrisy is really alarming. I mean, I think that it's not an easy solution. I think that one of the things that hopefully we see here in the future, in the not too distant future, is the Supreme Court took up a case very recently about the requirements of the Voting Rights Act and whether or not, kind of racially gerrymandered districts violate the Constitution, violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. And, shocker, what I'm about to say, I think so. I think that creating congressional districts based on the race of the residents of those districts is insane.
I was about to
I
use
think
that
that
word.
it's the worst thing you could ever imagine. It is judging every single person in that district solely based on the color of their skin and thinking that they can only have representation based on their skin color. They get to choose the candidate, have the candidate of their choice only based on their race, which is offensive. It should offend every person, regardless of what their race is. That the notion that, well, we have to have this black district and we have to have this white district and we have to have this Hispanic district. No, you have districts based on geographic areas where people have kind of common things in common. So it could be, more urban concentrated districts, more rural districts, other things where the representatives are going to be able to adequately represent the people of those districts based on the things that are unique to those districts, not based on the skin color of people. And so I think that if that Supreme Court case goes the way that I think that it will, that we're going to have a lot of redistricting that's going to have to happen across the country, regardless of what happens here. And so I think that we're going to have some unique opportunities over the next year. Hopefully there's some common sense that prevails in some of these states. But I think that until you guys would know better than I would. I'm not an expert on California's laws, but I'm pretty sure that
there's because there are no laws. Every day they change.
They just do whatever they want, right?
They wake up and go, "This is the law today." There's no you couldn't ask anybody here what exactly the law is. I mean, that's why when you look at
there's a two-tiered law system here too. I mean, there's
Right.
a lot of people that commit violent crime and they get out the next day, and then there are people that, do almost nothing and they're being locked up. So
Right.
California is a terrible example. So it seems like if this thing goes before the Supreme Court, coupled with, and hopefully they come out with some sort of solution, I would love to see just a standard grid pattern across the whole country and say, these are it. This is it. Just, you can't change it. It's just a grid, but hopefully they come up with something. So that with mass deportations and then a recounting of the census may actually realign some of the representation in Congress that we get, because everything is all skewed.
By the way, just for the record, there have been 1.6 million, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Gene, that have self-deported so far. I hate to cite the New York Times, but they've reported we have had our lowest immigration levels ever, or in quite a long time. So these plans are working. The one thing I want to ask you is, because yesterday was a massive day of executive orders. So you had the flag burning, and I'm sure you were a massive Scalia fan, like most conservatives are. You might not be, but he was one of the votes that voted to protect flag burning. And I don't think he was very happy that he voted that way, but he did vote for this. And how do we get certain things? I know I get it, Congress, but President Trump is doing such common sense things with sending the National Guard in. And obviously everything he does gets, a judge knocks it down, and then it gets to the appellate court, and then it gets to the Supreme Court maybe. How legal, how the recourse is, people want to be safe, Gene, in Chicago. They're begging Trump to bring the National Guard in. How do we make this that judges can't say no? I mean, I know they're working on that in the Supreme Court, right? Kavanaugh and Gorsuch are actually working on protecting the lower judges from not being able to screw with us so much. But these are huge cases.
They are huge cases. And again, when you just, every time you see a headline, what I like to do is I like to just kind of close my eyes and I think, all right, where is this story going? And what is the bias behind this headline? And I start reading the substance. And, if you've ever worked kind of behind the scenes, you realize really quickly how often the news misses the mark, right? How everything, so much of it is just completely and totally fake. And so when you see these headlines in these stories, citing kind of inflated crime statistics or deflated, I should say, crime statistics for Chicago or Washington, D.C., or other places, and you hear politicians, Pritzker and others, oh, I'm going to protect my community. I'm, Mr. Tough Guy, and everything else. And you realize that common sense would dictate throughout human history, every civilization throughout human history, successful civilization, I should say, would understand that if there is a surge of illegal activity in an area, or you have an area that was particularly unruly, you deploy additional resources there. And our laws and our Constitution support the use of these authorities by the President of the United States to protect people. So I think that when it comes to interference, federal courts, for example, the judge out there in California who was saying that the president couldn't call up the National Guard, was one of the most asinine decisions you could have ever read, or never would have believed would have existed in the year 2025 if you're talking to someone alive in the 1800s. It's just a matter of time. I think at this point, there is a certain amount of kind of judicial rebellion that has been occurring since January 20th, 2025. We lived through it for 4 years, from 2017 to 2021 as well. That some of these folks are just recalcitrant, and there's not a whole lot that you're going to be able to do about some of these individual judges who have lifetime tenure, unless you are willing to impeach them, which we ought to explore and pursue very seriously as a country.
Can you bring that up quickly? Because I think this is like something, I know I'm taking too much of your time, and I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm actually not sorry. Just because I think this is a fascinating question. I think a lot of people want to know, right? It's almost like when you look at our government, it's an extension of college, right? It's like an extension of people that never wanted to graduate. Right. So it's like, it's like you become a senator, you have recess. I mean, where else? What other job has recess other than if you're in school? But you have tenure, right? If you're a professor, you have tenure if you're a judge. How do we is there a legal way of getting rid of these judges?
Yeah, there is, and it's provided for in the Constitution, which is impeachment. The country... obviously, the Democrats went after the president multiple times to impeach him for things that were really not impeachable offenses, but they raised the stakes, and they raised the profile of impeachment to such a level that the average American today thinks, oh, well, when it comes to a judge, gosh, they must have really engaged in some horrible conduct to be able to begin even thinking about impeachment. But that's actually, you don't have to just murder somebody to be impeached and removed from office. The standards are much lower than that for what qualifies for impeachment. Now, look, of course, there is tension. There's tension we have to acknowledge, right, between making lifetime tenure appointments for people so that they can make decisions without worry about what the passions of individual human beings might be. And you need things like that in a country that's committed to the rule of law. But impeaching a few bad actor judges who thumb their noses at the United States Supreme Court, for example, or who violate their oaths of office, or who are not partial in administering justice, impeachment has to be an option that we pursue as a country, and that we should ask for our representatives to pursue. Because if we don't, we are going to forever be under the thumb of radical judges all across this country.
Could America First Legal do something like that? Or is it solely left to the government?
I mean, it's the impeachment proceedings, of course, have to, begin in the House and, finish in the Senate. It's something that we can expose, and we can draw attention to some of the bad conduct, impermissible violations and permissible conflicts of interest amongst certain judges, for example, that America First Legal has been involved with exposing in the past. So there's again, I'm not throwing the concept around willy-nilly. It is actually something that we have to maintain at the ready. When you look at what the founders thought about the way that this government would work, and kind of how each branch would hold the other accountable, and how power would be exercised and leveraged, and ensure that you were doing things for the betterment of the American citizens. At the end of the day, impeachment was one of those tools that the founders really and truly had an appreciation for. And so, it's funny because when it comes to Article 3 with judiciary, we have been so reluctant as a society to pursue impeachment as a remedy for abhorrent conduct by individual judges. And yet then on the other side, we have the Democrats who really kind of lit up impeachment proceedings against President Trump in just terrible ways over the last number of years, but that demand other things like the availability of criminal prosecutions against the president, while dismissing that impeachment was actually the tool that the founders thought would be available and accessible when the circumstances arise that justify it. And so you have the Department of Justice try to prosecute Donald Trump, right? And the President Biden's chief political rival, and impeachment was not good enough for them. They thought that they needed to go for criminal prosecution, and so it's just devaluation and underappreciation for impeachment as a tool for constitutional accountability in this country. And I'm just generally a person who is in favor of the branches holding each other accountable. And it would be great if the Congress actually started thinking about what impeachment proceedings would look like.
Do you know if there are any current impeachment proceedings being put together or in play against any judges yet? Or is this just hypothetical?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah. And listen, we are running out of time. We got to let Gene go. So I'm going to let you get a final question in.
There we go. Okay. So I know that you guys, American First Legal filed complaints with the AG Tennessee for the Equal Opportunity Commission, accusing Cracker Barrel of favoring, diverse hirees. And, the Trump administration went after all the universities for their DEI policies and all of that. And there's rumors out there that a lot of these companies and a lot of these universities are really just changing the words on their website, but not really changing their practices. And this all comes back to this ideological subversion, which Yuri Bezmov, the ex-KGB guy, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy.
Bezmov, yeah.
It's a great watch. Right. So, he talked about how to destroy a society like America. It's a 40-year plan. You get, the college students to get all riled up. They become professors. They become leaders of industry. And then you're all infected. And it seems like that's where we are. We have the CEOs of major corporations running with the most racist policies out there in the name of DEI. And, universities as well, just pumping our kids with the most ridiculous takes. They are hiring actual jihadis and terrorists to teach the kids and put insane ideas into these kids' heads. So I appreciate that America First Legal is going after some of these companies and holding them to task. But is there any way to know how deep this rot is? And how do you guys find the cases? Do people come to you and say, hey, Cracker Barrel discriminated against me, and then you guys go after them? Or is there another mechanism that you guys have in place that allows you to identify companies and individuals that are breaking the law?
Yeah, those are really good questions. So it kind of depends. We do have people who come to us, and anyone in the public who thinks that they might have a case that they want to refer our way can go to our website, aflegal.org, and they can fill out a contact form. They can go to visit our Center for Legal Equality, and they can submit some information there. and our attorneys will review everything that's submitted and, get back to folks about individual cases. Sometimes we have people just come straight off the street, basically, and come in and tell us about their circumstances, and we evaluate their case and see if it's one that we can take on. Other times we just become aware of things that come out there, or maybe we'll have a tip from somebody about some practice that's going on at a different company, or maybe it's something that another lawyer or law firm refers our way. There's any number of ways that these things come to our attention, but you raise kind of a systemic issue that I think is really worth highlighting, which is the extent to which this rot was so pervasive in our society, especially from 2021 to 2025. I mean, it was, showing up in different communities, in different sectors, more than others for a long time. But it was really, truly during the Biden administration where we witnessed some of the most egregious examples of racial discrimination that anyone would have ever thought possible since the civil rights movement, right? I mean, it's, here we go as a country through the civil rights movement. We talk about treating everyone equally based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. We strive, Americans embrace this kind of notion. You have entire generations who grow up and have had this drilled into their heads. I know, for example, I was, and I am fully committed to the concept that every American citizen who is in the United States deserves to be provided equal opportunity and not to be judged based on the color of their skin. But yet you had companies in universities who are making decisions about people based on just completely impermissible demographic characteristics, like the color of their skin, their sex, things that are not at all tied to the merits and the qualifications of a particular position. And a lot of those things arose from misunderstandings about what federal law required. Thank God President Trump ditched President Johnson's executive order, for example, that required affirmative action to be used for federal contractors. There's a lot of confusion that stemmed from that no one else ever had the guts to just end because it caused racial discrimination. Or we have Title VII, Title VI, Title IX, all these other federal laws that are intended to protect the civil rights of every American citizen that were never used to actually protect the rights of every American citizen. Right. And so you have kind of a really interesting set of facts where you basically have an entire kind of ruling class, so to speak, not in the Marxist sense, but in kind of an elitist class in corporate America and also in the universities, who were taught to basically pursue a lot of different things, maximize profits, maximize bottom line, all good stuff. Capitalism is amazing. Don't get me wrong. But who were taught that basically any time that you faced any threat of pressure from any outside agitators who said, well, I don't think your company looks like you have enough this kind of person working there, or you have enough kind of this person working there, so we're going to protest you and we're going to cause chaos for you and your company. And basically you have an entire generation or generations of corporate leaders who were afraid to stand up to human resources and to the HR consultants and to some of these outside agitators who would come in and
let's just say Al Sharpton,
Jesse Jackson. Al Sharpton, right? I mean, that is a great example. Jesse Jackson, all these folks who would run around and they would cause all this chaos. And so what that then bred is this entire cottage industry of consultants who came in, and they were equity consultants, and they could come in, they could help you design your equity program and your DEI program. And they would get paid all kinds of money to do things that flagrantly and expressly violated federal law in terms of the way that folks are treated. And so whether it's in the private employment context, whether we're talking university admissions, whether we're talking anything else. These were supposed to have been settled questions, 60 years ago. We're supposed to have ended that and began a journey that was going to lead to a more, a more just and perfect society. And yet, to this day, I have a couple cases that are on my desk right now that we're about to announce, major lawsuits against major companies for engaging in discrimination against individual American citizens because of who their parents were, because of how they were born, things that they cannot actually control. And people were doing it with impunity because no one in the Biden administration and no one else was standing up for the rights of everyday average Americans who were on the receiving end of this. And we all know, look, we could talk about this for a long time, but the long-term societal consequences of having woke bureaucrats, whether in the government or in the private industry, because they're basically government adjacent and they're fostered and cultivated by government actors in nonprofits and NGOs who engage in oppression of different citizens based on the color of their skin. There are long-term lasting societal consequences, not just for the people who suffer the immediate discrimination, right? Not just the individual job holder who is laid off and they said, well, we're looking for a more diverse candidate. Or we like you, we'd hire you, but you're not the right color. The consequences for that individual person are long and lasting and immediate, but that person has family. And that person has kids and a wife and brothers and sisters and, mom and dad and all kinds of other folks who in turn suffer consequences from that. And down the line, if this continues long enough, it breeds so much resentment. And that in turn breeds lots of problems for you as a society going forward. So it is not a peaceful solution. There is nothing equitable about it. There's nothing just about DEI. There is nothing right. There's nothing morally justified against discriminating against people. When you're making a decision to hire somebody for a job, you hire based on merit. Anything else doesn't matter. Merit and citizen, or being a green card holder, lawfully authorized to work in the United States. But those are the things that you're supposed to think about: merit and qualifications and excellence. And if we can strive for those things and we can return to a place as a country, as a society, where we are unified by this Constitution, where we are unified as a group of people based on shared appreciation for values that have made us great, Judeo-Christian values, that a set of norms that we all accept and recognize, whether we're ardent believers of our, in our own faith and going to church or synagogue every week or anything in between, that we understand and appreciate. These are the values and these are the things that made this country great. But being willing to stand up and to say, no, we're not going to take this anymore. No, I am not going to set aside X number of jobs for this program for somebody just because of the color of their skin. Anytime you hear someone say these words, this is a phrase that everyone in the business community uses or used for a while. We want our workforce to reflect the community in which we operate. It is the most garbage line you could ever imagine. That is an illegal line. And what a line means is that you're engaging in intentional racial discrimination against human beings for no reason other than your arbitrary markers that you want to match up, whatever. Your local community has 60% white people, 30% black people, 10% Hispanic, whatever the case may be, that you're going to constantly engage in some balancing regime to make your populace look like this community, not because of merit, but just because you think that people should be judged based on their race. That's insane. It's just so wrong. It's illegal. We are so committed as an organization to stopping that and to bringing accountability to people who have wronged real people and getting back to a place where American citizens across this country, regardless of where their families came from, regardless of their backgrounds, are unified by this set of norms and values. They strive for merit. They strive for excellence. They strive for making this country a better place for the next generation. That is what we want, and that is what we hope that we will get. And we're so thankful to have a president and an administration that shares the same value set. I mean, I can't speak for them. I only speak for myself. But from my observations, that is exactly what it is.
I think from all our observations, it appears that way. And both of you brought up something. And as we're closing this out, this isn't, I keep on saying to people, this can't be a 3.5-year plan.
Right.
The rot is there. We have to think like Democrats do about 12 years, a 12-year plan, a 16-year plan. But this has to be presidents.
But they also need to be moving at light speed, which, they're doing a great job getting rid of it. But the fear is that if another Democrat comes into office, what we saw for the last 4 years under Biden is going to just be a trial run, and they're going to ramp it up. So immigration will be ramped up. DEI policies will be ratcheted up to the max. Boys and girls sports and all that other stuff is going to be ratcheted up. It's really funny. There is one super woke organization that never made that one statement that we're going to try to make our organization match the communities which we serve, and that's the NBA. Never heard them say it.
Perfect way to end. The AFL is an amazing organization. I'm not just saying that because we're friends. I'm not just saying that because you guys are doing God's work. And
we got to ask, how do people support you? How do you guys raise funds? How can people get involved? How do people help? Where can they find you? Let's do all the pitches.
Yeah, look, so our website, aflegal.org, is a wonderful resource, a wonderful place for information where you can read about our cases, read about our work, the difference that we've made, and where, if you're so inclined, you can donate through the platform of your preference. One of the best ways to get engaged with us is to follow us on X. Follow our account, America1ST Legal. I have an account, Gene Hamilton USA. We post
Truth Social.
And we're on True Social as well. We're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. We post everything that we possibly can to try to communicate to people. You can sign up for our email list and we'll get our press releases and our announcements. We want to not only be a place where you can learn about the work that we're doing, but one of the other ways that we want to be helpful to Americans across this country is by being a resource, a location for resources to equip the average American with tools that they need to take action on their own. And one of the ways that we're doing this, which is very exciting, we've had a number of these toolkits on our website already for parents. We call them parental rights toolkits that explain to you your rights for your children who are attending schools that receive federal funding, whether that's under the PPRA, Title VI, Title IX. We're adding some new ones under FERPA, under the IDEA, and we're announcing a launch of a brand new kind of landing page that has, and then also explanations as how to use FOIA in your state, under your state's open records laws to obtain records. This is just one way. That we want to equip and empower parents across this country to fight back. And that's just in the educational context, right? There's other ways that we want over time to be helpful to the American people and to empower them and to help them fight back. But one of the best ways that we think that we can do that right now is to help parents give these tools in their hands so that you can hold accountable woke bureaucrats who are maybe they're indoctrinating your kids with some kind of radical curricula, whether they're convincing your kids that they're a person of the opposite sex. Any of these other issues, we want to ensure that parents across this country know what their rights are under federal law and that they're prepared to exercise them. And so whether it's providing resources like that, signing up for our newsletter, following us on social media, just clicking repost on something you see on True Social, something you see on X. Share the news Look, read the information for yourself. Make
No,
your own
listen,
decision. You
it's
know,
brilliant. But listen, Gene, what you guys do is God's work. That I have met every single one of you, almost every single one of you, and I've had the chance to spend time with a lot of you. It's amazing what you guys do, and
It's a
I
national
the,
treasure. America First Legal and Gene Hamilton, national treasure.
national treasure. I'm going to tell you
thank
something
you.
a guy named Roberto said to me years ago when I was trying to raise money for something, and I felt bad for asking him for money, and he said to me, I can't do his Italian accent. He said, Judah, you never feel bad about asking. You're doing the work. And so for the people out there, donate to America First Legal because they're doing the work. And I will never feel bad about asking for money for them or doing whatever it is I could possibly do because they are doing such amazing work. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I thank God you have a family that understands what you do and that I mean, you must, you got to have the greatest family in the world.
I do. In fact, I do have the greatest family in the world, and they're awesome. And I really appreciate those kind words. I mean, look, um, Judah, you mentioned earlier the audience. We're donor funded. We're a donor funded organization. This doesn't happen without contributions from folks who are believers in the things that we're fighting for and believers in this country. And one of the greatest things about America First Legal, I think, is that we're a 501c3. So, of course, donations are tax deductible. But we are one of the greatest returns on investment that anyone could ever have when it comes to preserving this country and our way of life and ensuring that the next generation, and again, the generation after that, are going to have every opportunity that we had and then some. So I wouldn't view it as parting with your money or giving it to some organization you don't know what they're going to do. We fight. And the return on investment for our donors and for our supporters is incomparable to any other organization that's out there. So thank you. Thank you very much for the for the kind words.
No. I mean, I would not say this if I didn't believe this to be 100% the truth. Every single thing you guys do goes above and beyond any organization I've ever witnessed or met in my entire life. You treat everybody with dignity and respect. I mean, everything you guys are about is truly awesome. And to the people that are listening out there, they're saying, trust me, they are amazing people from top down. You walk into their offices, you feel like you're at home. And this is in Washington, D.C., not a place you often could say that about, but places in offices you feel like at home. So I just want to say one last thing. You brought up something before, and this is why the AFL is so important. I know you don't believe Republicans will ever impeach. I hear the hesitancy when you bring things like that up about impeachment. So you truly are our last line of defense, and with checks and balances. So I'm not putting words in your mouth on that. That was just something I sort of speculated or took or insinuated, however you want to say it. So thanks again, Gene.
Before we sign off, it's worth noting that Gene worked with America First Legal. Then he was brought into the administration. And then the work at America First Legal is so critical, so important, and so rewarding that he jumped back over to America First Legal to take up the helm there again. So thank you, Gene. Thank you for all that you guys are doing.
Seriously, bottom. I mean, there's you really do. No, seriously, we live in. I mean, I'm telling you, man, you give everybody hope. I mean, they've been through the ringer in this country for so long, and it's not just 4 years. It's been a long time.
Right.
We forget the Obama going. I mean, we forget Bush. I mean, we forget a lot. People. I mean, this is you guys are a generational organization with a generational president, and we cannot waste that. That cannot be said. That's not being said lightly. That's an extreme. That's an important thing to note. So that's just my.
We hope that you'll be willing to come back and do this again soon.
Well, look, I'll be happy to. Y'all are great, and look, all I can say is that we are really privileged to be able to do what we do, and honored and to fight. And to be frank, I would love it if there were 1,000 copycats who came out there and tried to put us out of work, because that would mean that there would be that many more people who someday will be in the gulag with me whenever the libs take power. I'm looking forward to my assignment as being a team lead on the rock breaking duties. It's going to be great. But in the meantime, we have a country to fight for. I really appreciate your guys' time, and we're here to help. We're here to help make a difference, and we're here to try to fight for this country that we all love.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I am personally going to go out and share those DIY toolkits that you have on the website. I think that is fantastic. I love it that you guys are doing that. Empower the masses, create an army of people that can stand up to the lunacy. So thank you. Thank you guys for everything that you're doing.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody that's been listening to this episode. Just go to afllegal.org. Okay, thank you. I'm happy you said that out loud, and we're going to be putting it up. Say that one more time. So I don't feel like
aflegal.org.
aflegal.org. And it's just please go there. And also you can follow us on Substack at The Daily Cheat Sheet. We will be posting that there. YouTube The Daily Cheat Sheet, Spotify The Daily Cheat Sheet, Apple The Daily Cheat Sheet, X at TD Cheat Sheet, Instagram at The Daily Cheat Sheet. You can find us everywhere at The Daily Cheat Sheet pretty much. And thank you again, Gene Hamilton. Seriously, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And I just want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.